Hello and welcome to Feed Your Faith, or welcome back. In this segment we're going to be having a look at Philippians chapter 1 and verse 6, because there's something really interesting going on here. You know, it's valuable to reflect on Paul's relationship with his readers, and in each letter we gain different insights. And there's something fascinating going on here which it's not possible to reproduce in an English translation. Paul says this: "I'm confident that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ." Now, there's a picture here embedded in the original Greek words behind "to begin" and "to complete." And here's the story. If in our culture I was to say to you, you know what, we'll persevere from starting blocks to tape, you would know instantly what I mean. I'm talking about a race, starting blocks at one end, winning tape at the other. They mark the beginning and the end of the race. Now, if you came from another culture and didn't know those terms, the whole analogy might be lost on you. And that's what's going on in verse 6. You see, if you were a Greek worshipper of some pagan deity, when you went to make a sacrifice, a torch would be lit with the fire from the altar, and that blazing torch will then be dipped in a bowl of water. Symbolically, the flame cleanses the water, and that water is used later on in the ceremony. That act marked the beginning of the ceremony. Now, there was a special name for this beginning of a sacrifice, the enarchesthai, and that's the word that Paul used here. Now, the ceremony will get underway, there'd be different elements to it, and once the gift had been offered and the sacrificial liturgy was all done and dusted, there will be another special word, epitelein, to indicate the whole ritual had been done perfectly or without any errors. And that's the word Paul uses to say complete. "I am confident," he says, "that he who began enarchesthai, a good work in you, will carry it on to completion, epitelein, until the day of Christ Jesus." And his listeners, because probably this letter would have been read out loud to more people than would be able to read it, his listeners would instantly know what he's talking about, in the same way that you instantly understood starting blocks and tape. And this isn't the only place where Paul uses this idea. This is Romans. "I urge you," he says, "in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true act of worship." So Paul is taking the words they would use for pagan worship and he's using them to indicate something about how we live for Christ. Paul is seeing the life of every Christian, yours and mine, as a sacrifice, prepared and offered to Jesus Christ. The only gift that Jesus Christ desires of us is ourselves and our lives. We are to be the sacrifice. And the only way that can happen is if we rely on God's generosity, on his grace to rescue and to cleanse rather grubby vessels like me. And the appropriate, actually the only logical response is to yield ourselves as best we can and as wholeheartedly as we can to Christ, wherever that might take us. God bless you. Well, from here you can like, you can subscribe, and you can click elsewhere to see some more videos from this channel that I hope will feed your faith.